Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at where we left off last time. We have our three main characters here. When I press play, I'm presented with this Start Game button, and then I can select any three of these characters. So let's say I select TJ, for example. What I want to do now is create a script that'll allow me to control TJ. And really, I just want some basic platformer movement, and that's like moving left to right, as well as jumping. So inside your scripts folder, right click, create another C# script. And for the name of the script, name it character controller underscore CSS. Now, I just left open my menu manager and my game manager here just in case we need to reference it throughout the script. I think we're really just going to control movement with this. I'm going to actually click on Sally here and hold shift. I'm going to grab this character controller script and drop it on there. And now when I select each one of these, you'll see that they all have the script on there. And really, they're just going to be sharing the same script because it's going to control the movement. And I'm going to grab my character controller script from here and just drop it inside of here. So let's add some variables here. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and they're just, these are all movement variables. All right, so we have a variable here for move speed, and then we have another one that's going to control the jump force. So when I hit spacebar, really that's just going to be how high our character can jump. This rigid body 2D here is going to be used to control physics. Now the sprite renderer here, I'm going to be using because if we look back at our character here, let me go ahead and go to level 1. And let me drag in TJ, for instance. He has this sprite renderer on here. And in the last tutorial, what I did is I used code to flip the character. But what I want to do is I'm just really going to just select this flip X and just flip it. So that's what I'm going to use the sprite renderer for. And then this private boolean is grounded here is really just going to check if our character has hit the floor. Now what I need to do here is select TJ and Theo and Sally, all three of them. And I need to add a component down here, and that component is going to be a rigid body 2D. And what this is going to do is allow us to have physics to control how our character moves. Now, if I select TJ here, you can see because I added it down here, it automatically updated in the scene for me, which is really nice. And with this rigid body 2D on there, when I press play, notice what happens to our character. It falls through. Now, if I move my character over here, let's check off flip X for a second. And I move him here, notice that he actually still falls through the floor. Now, if I select the floor here, you'll notice I don't have a box collider 2D. So let's go ahead and start typing box, and we're going to select collider 2D. I'm going to hit F to focus on this. I'm just going to double check that that my collider is really the same size, and it is. You can see here. It's going to be a little bit different for this character. We're going to have to adjust it. It looks like TJ, I moved him off of his component there. There we go. If I move TJ here and I press play, you're going to notice he still falls through the floor. And the reason for that is because he also needs a box collider. I'm just going to go with a 2D collider here. Now, the collider did not go to the shape of TJ because it's just going to the shape of the empty game object. So you're going to have to press here to edit our collider. Go ahead and hit F to focus. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit. And then just adjust the width. I tend to go a little bit wider than the character because I want the character to also get affected by hits or collisions or anything. Like say they bump against an enemy. And just having that extra leeway oftentimes helps. So let's go ahead and uncheck this and then let's move them down just a little bit. And now when I press play, you'll notice that TJ sits right on top of that surface. And I tend to start off my character a little bit higher just so that it registers that collision. And that's why we're going to be using this Boolean as well to check if our character is grounded. Now, the next thing I want to do is if we shrink these down, I need to get access to the sprite renderer of the character here. And notice the sprite renderer for this character is not on this empty game object that we created. It's actually below. It's right here. So there's a nifty tool. So if I grab this name here, or a nifty command inside of Unity where I can just do, we're used to get component, the get component. Well, they actually have a get component in children. And with this, we could say, well, what's the child that we want to get? And that child we want to get is a sprite renderer. So I'm going to grab this and save it. Now, to show you that this works in real time, I'm just going to make this public for a moment. I might even just leave it as public. I don't know if it matters, but I mean, just for our exercise. And now you can see when I press play here, notice that the sprite render is in the component that's below, and this is empty. But when I press play, it references the name TJ Art here, and then what component it's grabbing from it, which is our sprite renderer, which is pretty great. All right, so we have that pretty much worked out. Let's go ahead and create two more functions here. One is just void move. And the other one is void jump. So the logic that handles the movement is going to be in this method here, and the logic that handles the jump is going to be here. So there are a little bit cleaner ways of doing this where you wouldn't use update to check every frame, but let's go ahead and just call these out inside of here. Okay, so right now jump isn't really doing much. And what I'd like to do inside of this move method, and just to kind of reiterate, if I print I am, just to show you how these function calls work, I am in move. And I know sometimes it seems like a little bit like overkill to kind of re-explain things I've explained in previous videos. But the problem, one of the things with my class is the prerequisites are lifted on some of them, which I'm totally cool with because it gives people from other majors the opportunity to learn about cool game stuff. So I kind of try to reiterate, so just maybe watch them on speed too. But what happens here is we have this update function, which is called every frame. And we created two methods here. And then we have two method calls. You'll also hear them called function calls here. And the way you call a function is something like this, or a method, is you write the name and you put a semicolon behind it. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-C here to bring up my console after this thing is done loading. And when I press play, let's uncheck that and just leave this debugger on thing here. I'm going to press play. And you could see it's calling them every frame. So this is like 1,000 something times. It's calling I'm in jump, I'm move. That's these two. So this is always running. You can think about it as something that's always running. So with that said, it's going to always check inside of here if we pressed any of our like arrow keys to move our character. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, so you don't have to hear me type all this stuff out, is I'm going to type out some code. I'm going to pause the video, type out some code, and then come back and explain it. All right, so this first line of code here, what we're doing is we're checking if, we're not really checking anything. We are, horizontal is mapped to the A and D key and the left and right arrow key. And really all we care about is this x-axis here. And so what I want to do is I want to take that information, which is the positive or negative value, movement value here, and I want to pump that into a second variable, which is just going to be a move variable. And that's going to store the x and y value of our character. And we're going to be using this method up here called move speed to be able to control how fast our character is moving on the x-axis. So what we do here, let me go ahead and, here, I'll just type it out. Sorry about the clicking. So vector2 here, we're going to use, and we're just going to call this variable called move. And it stores an x or y axis, right? This is the vector2. And we're going to allocate new memory for that by starting new, and then we're going to do vector2. Let's put a semicolon here. Now you can see here, if I move my cursor over this, maybe over this guy, yeah, you could see that it gives you an explanation of what you can store inside of here, right? It's like, let's see if we expand that, if it gives us even more. Yeah, so it gives us a subtle explanation. I'm going to go ahead and put a comma here, which you can read through or go through the documentation. Now I can type in X here. And what that's going to do is now it's going to move. We haven't actually applied this to the rigid body, which is the physics here. But there's our value of X. Now, we don't to give us a little bit more control over how fast the character moves, we're going to multiply this by move speed. So you just do asterisk and then start typing out move speed. Now for the Y, this is going to essentially be when we hit the space bar, it's going to move the rigid body, the physics of the rigid body upward. We're going to be adding stuff. So we can do RB. And if you're like, well, what was RB? Remember, that's where we're grabbing the component, which is this rigid body. And then we're going to just grab the velocity of that on the Y axis. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now the way to actually move our character is I type in RB dot, and then I'm just going to do velocity and then equals that move variable we just created. So let's press play and see. Let's actually, now remember our move speed is 5 here. Not having any move speed at all is equivalent to 1, right? That's just whatever the value that's being pumped in from this level, this pressed here, our arrow pressed, or our A and D keys being pressed. So now when I press it, you can see moves kind of slow. We actually need to lock the position of the rigid body. So I'm going to go to rigid body 2 here. You saw that it was rocking, or you've experienced it if you're following along. What I want to do is just freeze the rotation. So now when I press play, you can see it moves it. Now it's pretty slow, and that's why we want to increase move speed. So like say we make this 5. Let's click back on this guy, or I'll right click in this view. That's weird. Okay, let's try that one more time. Let's change this to 5. Press play. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, it got caught on something, I guess. But yeah, you can see now it's going by 5. Sometimes you have to kind of just like fiddle with it a little bit, but I didn't do anything different to get it to work. So 5 is okay. That's fast enough. And again, we can do power-ups where we mess with move speed and jump force. What I'd like to do though is notice, like, as our character moves left and right, what I'd like to do is if I press the left mouse button on my sprite render here, I want it to switch to that as my character moves left and right. And then I'd like it to switch back like this. All right, so let's go ahead and just do a quick access to that. So if, and then tab, the x-axis is greater than 0. We're going to grab our sprite render. Remember, this is getting that component from below. And this is pretty easy. And then you just do dot. And then this is pre-made, flip x equals false. And so what this is remember, this is a Boolean value here where it's just a check mark, which checks it on and off. So we're saying like, okay, if x, which is this value here, let's make sure we have the right case. If x is greater than 0, we're going to flip it, and then we'll just do an else if. Actually, let me just go ahead and highlight all of this and press Control D to duplicate it, and I'll put else in front of it. And then I'm going to change this, and I'm going to make this true. And I'm going to hit Control S. Now let's press play here. And you can see now our character turns left and right. Something else to check, we're not done yet, we're going to do the jumping thing, is, remember we added this script to our other characters. So let me delete this out so we don't save that. And let's just go to our scenes and let's go to level 01. Press play. Main menu. And press play. And let's go to our game view down here. Start game, and I select Sally, and you could see, oh, Sally might be missing those components. So we're going to have to go, let's select, I think Theo 2 is probably missing those components. So it's got a rigid body, but they're both missing a box collider, 2D. And let's see, can we open Sally up? Yeah, let's open Sally here. Now, when you hit the open button, we're actually opening this prefab here, Sally, and it allows us to edit this. So I'm going to just move this up really quick. And then looks good. And then let's click on. All right, if you hit this arrow here, you can back out. And then let's go to Theo. Let's hit open here and edit this box collider on Theo. And then we'll back out of here to save that. Now let's press play again and hit start game. And then if I select Sally, you can see I can move her, but I cannot jump yet. Okay, let me go ahead and, because this move method is pretty much done. In it update, we're going to call jump. So what I'd like to do is call jump if I press the space bar. So let's just do if tab input dot get button down, and the button we're looking for is jump. And we also, remember we built this Boolean to check if we are grounded. That means if we're on the floor. This is our safety check. And is grounded, which means if is grounded is true. If we wanted to check if it was false, we'd put an exclamation point in front of it. We're going to go ahead and call this jump method. And the way I was able to move that up without cutting and pasting is I held the Alt key and I pushed the up and down arrow keys. So let's save that, and then let's go down to our jump method, and let's just write this out. So I'm going to hit Control L to delete that line. And let me pause the video and type this out. Okay, so we're going to do something similar to this. But instead of like calculating the move and all that stuff, we're just going to grab this rigidBody.velocity here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to say once we jump, rigidBody.velocity equals new, and we're going to do another vector 2 here. Oops. I know I said I was going to pause this, but I'm just going to write it out. Sorry. And so what we do is we're going to grab our velocity here, and we're going to say, hey, on the x-axis, we're just going to keep it as is. Okay? So like we're just, whatever our x-axis is now, we're going to keep that the way it is. And then what I'm going to do is on the y-axis, I'm going to add jump force, which is this variable that we have here. And remember, so when we press the space bar, it's going to apply jump force to the y-axis, and it's going to move us up. The thing here is, if we don't add that is grounded variable here, because remember, it's set to true right now. Watch what happens to our character. So let's go back to, well, let's just play through it really quick. So I'm going to hit start game. This time I'm going to select TJ. Notice when I hit spacebar, he just keeps moving up. And the reason for that is we're never really checking if our character hits the ground or is colliding. And we also never turn this is grounded to false. And also TJ looks like TJ needs a blocks collider on him. So let me just, actually let's do one thing at a time. Sorry. We'll do is grounded equals false. That means we are setting this to false. Remember, when we hit the floor, we need to set it back to true, and we'll do that in a second. But here we go. Let's press play and start game, and I'll select TJ. Notice I'm like smashing the space bar, and nothing is happening because we're set to false. So we need to set it back to true. We also need to go into TJ here and make sure that he's got a box collider. So I'm going to hit open here. And I thought I added a box collider to TJ. I could be wrong. Box collider 2D. Maybe it didn't save. And let's just quickly do this. It gets annoying when you click off and then it doesn't lock it. All right, and let's get this right underneath our buddy's feet here. And then let's go back and press play and then start game. That's like TJ, and there he is. But now when I hit spacebar, now he's got some major hops. And like I said, we're doing almost like a Mario-esque type clone where, you know, the main thing behind Mario is that he defies gravity. And so let's maybe make jump force like 3. And this time when we start a game and we select Theo, 3 even is pretty high. We'll change jump force to 2. Start game, Theo. You know what? Maybe this isn't updating. Yeah, it stays at 10. I'm like looking at the same character. That's why. Anyway, let's just change it in here. We'll hard code this to like 3. And let's save it. And now let's turn this back to true, but we're going to do this where we're going to check for a collision. Now, what I'd like to do is let's go back to our level here. Our level 01. And let's select our square ground here and let's add a tag. And the tag that we're going to add is this one called ground. Now, I had already kind of created this before. You remember this, so I could demo it for you to what we're going to create. So just if you remember, you type add tag and then you just hit a plus and you type in stuff here to add a tag. And then don't forget that you have to reselect your ground and then you have to select it here. You have to always go back and double check that. So let's go back and grab our playable character. I'll grab Sally. I'll just drop her in. And then I'm going to press W and just sort of move her down here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to make this public so you can see this happening in real time. And so now Sally should have a public is grounded variable here. And all right, so what we're going to do here is on collision enter. And we're looking for on collision enter 2D. I don't know why it didn't put void on there for us. On collision enter 2D. Collision. Usually it just kind of like creates the whole thing for me. Collision 2D, which is this one. That's the data type for the variable that we'll just call COL for collision. So once we collide with something, we're going to check if the object that we collided with, so if the collision, this should be lowercase. Actually, sorry. What is going on with that? So I named it COL. So if the collision.gameObject, and then we're going to do a dot compare tag. And remember the tag that we created was ground with a capital G. And it remembered it. And all we're going to do now is we're just going to grab this. If we collide with that object called ground, we're just going to set this back to true. And this should let us continuously jump forever, or like jump whenever we hit this. So for example, like I hit space, I can't do anything. I hit the ground, I can hit space. And let's make Sally 3 here, jump force 3. I don't know why I didn't save it. And then let's do this. And as long as we hit Control D to duplicate it, they're all going to have that ground tag. So we can move and then, did we forget to, I think we're going to have to go in on each character and make sure that we always go to constraint here and we lock that Z, freeze that Z axis so that our character doesn't flip. We're going to have to build something out where our character can kind of, 3 is really low. Make it 5. Where we restart at spawn point or something. And then maybe you can build something that's even further, and then you get the power up, because part of good game design is you sort of just give them that first introduction to how to use it, and then we'll do some sort of indication that the power up in the corner or something. That's it for character movement.